Thank you for making the long trek down the hallway to this room for the DBE program presentation. My name is Amy Conklin. I work at the DOT in the Civil Rights Division. I'm the DBE program administrator, and it's my pleasure to introduce Jake McSheffrey with Project Solutions. I'm just going to briefly read his bio in the handout. He is the business project manager at Project Solutions, Inc. He leads the business development team and manages the Department of Transportation DBE program supportive services for North Dakota, South Dakota, and Nebraska, and helps develop small businesses across the Great Plains region. Please welcome Jake.
Thank you. I don't think, well, I'll use the mic because I guess this is being recorded. So, as Amy said, I'm Jake McSheffrey. I work at Project Solutions, Business Projects Manager. And today, we're just going to cover some of the basic program guidelines of the DBE program and go into a little bit of strategies for both DBE firms and other contractors who would subcontract the work for the DBE firms. So before we start, is anybody in here a registered DBE firm or belongs, either owns or works for it? Okay. And so anybody else here would subcontract firms that are DBE firms? Okay, so we got a little bit of a blend. So I don't want to cater to too much of one side, so if you do have questions as this comes up, feel free to ask. It's pretty low key in there, so don't be afraid to, you don't have to wait till the end to ask questions. So to start, we're going to go over a little bit of the DBE program objectives, eligibility, application process, advantages of the program, strategies for the DBE firms themselves and prime contractors or any organizations that would be subcontracting the work out to the firms, some resources that are available to the DBE firms, and then the North Dakota DBE business development. So we'll cover a little bit what is an actual DBE. So Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, or DBE, is a small for-profit business concern that is 51% owned and operated by a socially or economically disadvantaged individual or individuals. To break that down a little bit further, the DBE program it's funded by the Federal Highway Administration and it's administered through each state's Department of Transportation. So the important thing about the DBE program, and sometimes I get comments about the word disadvantaged. People don't like that word, understandably so. The government picks the word, we can't really change it. But the important thing about the program is that it's a response or a solution to researched discrimination that has existed in the country. So the federal government did a lot of census studies and determined that discrimination that had existed more prevalent back in time still has effects modern day. So this is kind of the solution to how can we combat this problem that we've had. The way I like to look at it, it's not a handout, it's not a freebie to disadvantaged people. It's actually the product of a lot of work against discrimination. So all civil rights movements, everything that people have done before us to get to where we are, this is the government's response to help level the playing field and help make some solutions moving forward. So it's a great program. One of the things I love about the program is that there's not specific set-asides, so you still have to compete. It's not a handout. You have to show up to the table. You have to present your firm, market yourself professionally, and it's a great opportunity for firms to really get their foot in the door and start those conversations. And so as we talk about DBE, since it is managed and operated through the Department of Transportation, it mainly applies to highway, horizontal and heavy highway construction. So when you start branching that back, there's a lot of work components that actually funnel into the heavy highway construction. These are just some of them. We do certify a lot of firms that have a lot of different work components, but there's an emphasis on getting firms that are actually going to directly relate to highway construction and things of that nature. But as you can see, between fencing, land surveying, janitorial services, trucking, electrical, it's a pretty broad net. So if you're a firm or if you know a firm that could fall into one of these categories, that's definitely something we encourage, is that word of mouth about the program. And if you're subcontracting work out and you're seeing a firm doing something into this regard and you think they could be potentially eligible for the program, we do rely on that kind of word of mouth to spread awareness and get more enrollment. We'll talk a little bit about the enrollment in a minute here. So the primary objectives of the program: to ensure non-discrimination in the award and administration of federal aid contracts, to create a level playing field on which DBEs can compete fairly for federal aid contracts. We touched upon that a little bit. to ensure the department's DBE program is narrowly tailored. This is a very important one. So in order to maintain the integrity of the DBE program, it's important that we are certifying firms that are actually DBEs, that are performing a commercially useful function, that they're showing up and doing what they're certified to do, and providing that useful function. So the entire point of the DBE program is to take these small businesses, get them enrolled in the process, put them at a level playing field to actually and then helping them follow through and perform the function, seeking that feedback from them and from the primes, and trying to figure out, okay, how can we bolster the program? How can we get these firms better prepared? And what can we do moving forward? So ensuring that it's narrowly tailored to the right individuals, and now we're spending our time and resources developing the right firms to yield the most results for the state is pretty important. And that, again, goes into ensuring firms meet the eligibility standards. To help remove barriers to DBE participation in federal aid contracts, I think that goes a lot into some of the stigmas that are associated with the program. If you've been in this industry for a while, you may have polarizing views on the DBE program in general. And one of the things that we really try to do is break down some of the barriers, kind of the bugaboos about the program. It is a federal program, so there are certain caveats about paperwork to enroll and how it's carried out. So we're constantly looking for feedback and helping to improve the way that we conduct the process. So keep that in mind as you are out there in the field and performing these functions, that take notes and provide feedback to the state. And the last program objective is to assist the development of firms so that they can successfully compete outside of the program. So Project Solutions, we are the contracted supportive services providers. Our role, on top of helping to get firms certified and increase program awareness, is to help these firms actually grow with the intent that they'll graduate out of the program. It's a pretty hefty goal because the program has some pretty wide, expansive guidelines on what's eligible. So graduating out is not a simple task to do, but that's what we strive for. We're always striving for that next better mark, and we will touch upon that a little bit later as well on the services we provide. So eligibility guidelines, it breaks down into these three things. So ownership, 51% owned by a socially and economically disadvantaged individual. There's a little bit more to just the ownership that goes into the control element, and we'll touch upon that in the next slide. But essentially that's kind of the root cause. The business size determination, this is determined by SBA standards, Small Business Administration standards, and currently it's 28.48 million in the previous 5 fiscal years. So this number does change. Again, this is a pretty significant number, so in terms of firms graduating out, it's not something that's going to happen very quickly or by circumstance. There's a lot of years and dedication to the business growth to be able to outgrow the program just due to business size determination. And the last one is personal net worth. So your personal net worth is less than 1.32 million in order to be considered economically disadvantaged. Once you kind of go out of those business size and personal net worth, you're no longer considered an economically disadvantaged individual and therefore no longer qualify for the program. And again, these numbers do change, but they usually fluctuate around what they're at now. So ownership goes into control. So it's not enough just to be 51% owner of a company. You actually have to have control, which means you have to understand how the business works. You have to understand the technicalities of what the firm actually does. Part of the application process is a home office visit, and you will be asked questions in terms of being able to prove your intelligence in the industry and as a business as a whole. One of the things that obviously we're trying to avoid is having somebody be the face of an organization and say, oh, look, this person, this is a woman-owned company or minority-owned company, they own 51%, but behind the scenes, that person doesn't really know what's going on, they're not making any actual decisions, they're not driving forth the company, and it's not meeting the intent of the program. So we do look for that control, overall understanding, managerial, technical competence, and experience. And then again, the socially disadvantaged. So the government lays out what they deem as a socially disadvantaged class. There are, which you can find on the website, there are some examples of people who don't necessarily qualify for socially disadvantaged class who do still qualify for the program. It just comes down to a matter of proving that you as the individual are socially and economically disadvantaged. If you can prove that, then you have a case for getting this DBE certification. But again, the biggest thing to remember is the intent of the program. Why does this program exist? What are we trying to do? And if you can look inward and say, well, historically, have me or my family been socially or economically disadvantaged? And the answer is no, probably not the program for you. But there are other ways you can participate in the program by subcontracting and whatnot. The last thing to talk about here is the burden of proof. So the burden of proof falls on the actual applicant. If you're trying to apply to be a DV certified firm, you are the one who has to provide the proof that you are economically, socially disadvantaged. And a lot of that is just through the application itself, which we will go through, but sometimes, depending on your situation, you may be required to provide further documentation. So the application process, this ranges a little differently per each state. So if you are a North Dakota firm, it's a little bit of a different process. If you're trying to do an interstate certification, that's a little different process. So the easiest thing you can do is just go into whatever state you're trying to get certified, go to their civil rights website, type in DVE. It's pretty easy to navigate the different DOT sites to figure out what exactly you need to do for your application. Once you are certified in your home state, getting certified in another state is a lot easier because you're mostly just providing your original home state application. And again, some states may require some additional documentation. Some have used this system, this B2G Now system. Some states, they still go by mail, so you still mail in your application. Some use kind of like a Dropbox. It just kind of depends, and like I said, a Google search, you can figure it out pretty simply. But for North Dakota, so North Dakota uses the B2G Now system, which is fantastic. And I was in the Air Force for 8.5 years, so I have a lot of experience with government systems, and they never work very well. So this one is incredible. It was actually contracted out to be built and everything, so it really caters to the needs. And a lot of different states do use it, so you may find yourself at a similar splash screen in a different state's website, which is really nice because there's just that continuity through the system. So documentation. If you are a DVE firm, or obviously if you're bidding on federal contract jobs, the biggest thing when it comes to government is paperwork. So there's always a lot of paperwork. There's always a lot of paperwork, opportunities to fill out the paperwork incorrectly or use the wrong revision of a form or miss one initial and then it gets kicked back. So paperwork, paperwork, paperwork. It's important to take the time to gather all the applicable documentations. One thing I always tell people is when you do put together all this paperwork and you submit an application, it's good to keep this saved in a file on your computer or something, because if you apply for other small business programs, SBA, 8A, Woman Owned, anything like that, a lot of it is the same documentation that they're going to be requesting. So it's good to just have it, and it's usually good for a while, like a personal net worth statement. There's no set guidelines, but those are usually valid for approximately 5 years. So it's not something you have to constantly keep refreshing. So it's important to keep that documentation and save yourself some time in the future. Of course, all materials are kept confidential. Some of the stuff you'll have to submit is personal finance information, personal information about yourself. It's all kept completely confidential. The system, the integrity and security of this system is lockjaw, and that's why so many different states use it. One of the things is, in North Dakota, when you do apply, you'll submit your application, and I will actually be the first person to see it. So it's secure on our end too. I pretty much will just go through and make sure that all the paperwork that you have submitted is the correct form, that you've used all the proper, filled in all the proper spots, you're not missing any information. Like I said, there's a pretty extensive list. I won't go into detail about all the paperwork that's required. You can find that out on the website. We have a ton of materials up here that kind of cover that as well, and it's a lot. But one thing I like to say is if you are applying or you're recommending another firm that you work with to apply to the program, it can be daunting up front. A lot of people get turned away from it just because of the paperwork alone. I highly encourage, if you're applying or you're working with somebody who's struggling, to give me a call. If you're hitting a wall, if you're getting frustrated, if you're just like, I don't know what this site is asking for, call me. That's my job, is to help walk everybody through the process, explain why we do it this way, and get people to the point where they can actually finish an application and go to that next determination step. So my contact information is on all of this stuff, and I have some business cards as well too, but definitely keep that in mind, because failure to submit documentation can delay the process. Which goes into why do applicants get denied. So a lack of experience, this will be mostly in the job. So if it comes through your application that you're still kind of new, you don't really have the experience or the know-how quite yet, that could be a reason, because really what we're looking for are firms that are operational. that are ready to go. As soon as they get certified, they can start bidding on contract work and get out there and get going. So sometimes if there's a little bit more experience needed for a firm or an individual, that could result in a denial. Lack of control we talked about, that was if it comes through that this person does not actually own, operate, and manage this company. They're just the face of the company. There's a lot of fraud cases that happen because of that. If we have time, I put some fraud cases in here to review because they're always juicy and interesting. But a lot of times, those cases result from people trying to scam the government or trying to just pull the wool over their eyes. So it comes out, it's pretty easy to identify, so keep that in mind. Lack of documentations, we talked about that a little bit. Emerging rather than operational, again, they're looking for firms that are ready to go as soon as the certification hits. So if they find that your firm is a little bit early on in its stages of development, not quite ready to go yet, that could be a reason for a denial too. And then negative control. So negative control is a little different than lacking control because this caters more to when you do have control, you may know what you're talking about, you may make decisions for the business, but the non-disadvantaged owners of your company have the ability to vote you out. So you don't have complete total ownership because there could be a coup or something that would happen that would take you out of that position. Some of the things, if there's a quorum without the presence of the disadvantaged owner, that's called negative control. And basically, if there's any implementation into your company that could result in decisions being made without your consent, that's a negative control, and that's going to result in a lack of or denial. Anybody have any questions so far on any of this stuff? I'm that good of a teacher? So, advantages. So why become a DB? Why go through all the paperwork? What's the point of it? If there's no set-asides, why is it worth all the work? So participation goals on federal aid transportation projects. So big time contractors, big companies, they get jobs because they're saying they're going to employ DBEs. They're going to try to meet those goals. They're going to do those good faith efforts. They're going to reach out, and they're going to solicit DBE firms directly. This is a great opportunity for firms. So although there are no set-asides, there are going to be a lot of solicitation efforts. So you're going to be getting emails and phone calls saying, hey, I found you in the directory. I think you'd be great for this. Do you want to put in a bid? Things like that. So it opens up a lot of opportunities, which kind of goes into the next one, the expansion of business opportunities as well. A lot of projects, they range in what they are. So yes, they may be heavy highway, but there's a lot of different elements of that. So this is a great opportunity for firms to diversify their portfolio and see and experience a lot of things that maybe they wouldn't have been able to get a job on, and typically what they do. A landscaping company maybe used to be doing residential. Well, it's a whole different thing when you're doing something across from a highway or things of that nature. Bigger projects generate more cash flow. I don't think I need to explain that profitability is the root of all businesses. So, to be able to get more cash flow, to be able to get more projects, get your name out there, build your reputation, these are all different, additional opportunities that are available with the certification. And if you are a small business or you're trying to develop a small business, you don't really want to skirt any opportunities. So any doors you can open is what you're looking for. Again, with the experience of mentorship, a lot of this falls on the firms themselves. There's a lot of opportunity where you can actually seek this mentorship. You can get feedback from the contractors that hire you, other people in the field, people at the job site. So this is an opportunity to get out there, talk to these people, talk to these firms. Some of them were DBE firms at one point in their career. So you can actually see, well, how did you go through the process? How did you develop? What did you do? Especially, we're hearing a lot lately about, supply chain issues, labor shortages, everything for that happened since COVID hit. What are some of the unique strategies that firms now, successful companies, are employing to overcome these challenges? Interstate opportunities. So one of the things I like to say is if you are a DBE firm, you want to outline a radius of where you're willing to work. Depending on your company, it may not be practical to move all your equipment and personnel across a state line or a certain distance, but if you can generate, this is the radius we're willing to work. And if that circle on the map crosses into a different state, you should get certified in that state. If it crosses into a different district, municipality, you should understand the different tax laws that may be associated with that. But there's a lot of opportunity to go outside of your comfort zone, seek new things, meet new people, learn new trades at the job. And then excellent program benefits. So there are two big program benefits that we will talk about at the end. but they involve, from project solutions, our business development, general management consulting services. And then North Dakota actually has a reimbursement program where they will reimburse a firm up to $1,000 a year in terms of any conference events, professional development programs, accounting software things. You basically submit an application and say, hey, this is a business-related expense with the state of North Dakota reimbursing. Not a lot of people take advantage of that, so I highly recommend, if that's something that does sound interesting, these flyers in the middle, to pick one of those up and take advantage of it where you can. Now on the other side of the house, for the prime contractors, why is this beneficial to them? Why subcontract DBEs? Well, we talked about a little bit winning government bids, or when you do the good faith efforts, or you say, hey, we're going to leave this DBE goal, your company's more likely to get bids or get work. So that's one of the advantages. But a lot of times, just in general subcontracting, you're subcontracting for a specialty or licensure, something that your firm may not be that great at. It may cost you more money, time, and resources. A lot of times with these DBE firms, it's something that they have mastered, and that's why they started the business, because they spent their whole life mastering this craft, this trade. You're going to be hard-pressed to find people that may necessarily be better. So they started a business, and now is an opportunity to go after these smaller businesses, give them that opportunity. And a lot of times they're competing against each other, so you get a higher caliber of work a lot of the time.
Can I stop you with a question?
Absolutely.
So at the beginning when you said that you have to prove your experience that you're ready, can you use that 25 years as your experience? And yes, I just quit my job, but now I'm starting a DBE company doing exactly what I did for the last 25 years.
Absolutely, and that's the biggest thing to rely on, that you have personal experience. So, a resume is one of the things you submit in your application, and that will kind of prove that. And again, with the home office visit, that will kind of come out just how you can speak on the business and the work, and it's very easy for that to translate that this individual knows what they're talking about. They've been in the industry. That resume would go far in terms of that. There's also things you can submit if you have like a lot of equipment. You can submit pictures of like your warehouse or your trucks or things of that nature, which prove that you're involved. But yeah, if you have 25 years in the industry, that's a heavy thing you can lean on.
So it doesn't matter that it's a new company?
No, and I think the only thing for that is that the new company has the resources and is ready to start going. That would be the only caveat, but in that example, there wouldn't really be any question about the experience or the know-how.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then whenever we do subcontract work, depending on the subcontractors and whatnot, it usually is more cost effective because you take somebody who's a pro, who knows exactly what they're doing, they can get it done faster, cheaper. If they have their own materials, they can bring that too. So these are just some of the advantages. If you are a DBE, so this is some of the stuff that has been compiled from experience, from what contractors have said, prime contractors, small DBE firms, anybody involved in the industry. Over time, we've been trying to constantly get this feedback and see what are the best ways that a DBE can be competitive against other DBEs, but also just other contractors, other small businesses as well. So one of the big things is knowing your numbers. It's incredibly important, if you're operating a business, to have an understanding of your financial performance and knowing how much things cost, how much can we do work for. So the biggest thing is job costing. A deep dive into allocation of costs, what should be inputted into a proposal, what should not be input into a proposal. Depending on where you're at in your firm or in your development, you may not have a great sense of job costing, or you may have a great idea of it. A lot of times, like I said, firms are masters at their trade, but when they go into the business management side, they don't fully understand. They don't know all the marketing, the HR, the onboarding, the tax laws, the general business management that comes along with owning a company. So if you've ever been on the receiving end of an astronomical bid, that's probably because there wasn't a lot of job costing education that happened there, and people didn't fully understand how to allocate the costs. So if you are a DBE, knowing your numbers, knowing how to allocate those costs, knowing what falls into what category is critical. And that's one of the consulting services that Project Solutions offers. So market yourself, make yourself accessible. I think most people who have tried to solicit work from DBEs will say one of the most frustrating things is when there's lack of communication or no communication at all. You know, these firms have to do these good faith efforts, reach out to the DBEs constantly, continuously. If they're not getting word back, you know, hey, would you like to bid on this? If they don't receive a no, they have to reach out again. So being able to be responsive, be communicative is super important. And it's the easiest way to develop your reputation, even if you're not doing the actual work. If you're known as being a firm that is communicative, responds, then that's a huge boon, especially in the small business world. And that goes into communicating effectively. And then building, maintaining relationships. So actively seeking training events, you know, subscribing to newsletters, industry journals, conferences such as this, putting yourself in a position where you're going to meet new people, build those relationships is incredibly important. But the other part is maintaining them. So don't expect that just because you meet somebody, you build a relationship, you make a great connection, that they're necessarily going to remember you or reach out to you. On the DBE end or on the small business end, you have to be very proactive in these relationships. It's kind of like when you're dating somebody and you're doing all the texting and they're not responding back to you, you kind of have to fill that role as a small business. You got to be that proactive person. Reach out, say, hey, you know, it was great meeting you again. Just reminding you that if you're any interest in this job component, you know, we're here, and, you know, we're willing to talk, whatever. And then be there when they call, pick up the phone, because they seem like very simple little things, but these are some of the biggest issues that we find in the field. And completing all documentation timely and accurate manner. So again, it goes back to just paperwork. You know, whether it's payroll documents or schedule changes, it could be any type of submittal. Really. Make sure that you're doing it properly, you're on the right revision of the form, that you're submitting it timely. If there's going to be a change in your schedule and your work, let the people who need to know right away. Don't try to hide it. Don't try to just wait until it comes up or comes out in the wash. Let people know. Be that communicative tightly, because that's what's going to lead to more reputation and more work in the future. And the last one is to fully understand the scope. So when you do choose a project that you want to get involved with, you want to bid on, you want to do the work, make sure that you're actually fully understanding the scope beyond what is typical. There's plenty of times where additional work happens, there's errors that happen, there's faults, people make mistakes, there's timeline changes. So you need to make sure that your firm has the resources, the know-how, is able to adapt and be flexible. And if it's something that looks like it's out of your purview or out of your expertise, consider not bidding on a project. You know, you don't want to get into a position where you say you can do something, and then once you're there, it's kind of opening up into levels that you're not very comfortable with, and then that's a much different conversation to have at that point. So keep that in mind, fully understand the entire scope, read through everything, go in there knowing exactly what's going to be expected out of you, and having a plan on how you're going to accomplish the task. On the other end of the house, prime contractors, one good thing to know is the CUF, or commercially useful function limitations. So there's only so much you can do as a prime contractor to help a DBE firm out. It's very important because this can get you into trouble. If you start crossing a line and doing too much, it could be bad for the DBE, it could be bad for you. And some fraud cases that we're going to see do that as well. So one thing to know, or some red flags to look out for, is if equipment is owned by another company. If the employees work for another company, either the contractor or the subcontractor. If the foreman on the site works for another company. There's a little bit of a pattern here. So if you realize that there's people providing equipment, doing the work, or managing the site that have nothing to do with the firm, the DBE firm, that's a red flag that, okay, maybe there's something else at play here. Making sure that the primes themselves or any other subcontractors aren't doing the work that was committed to the DBE. So if the DBE is supposed to do this pavement, you want to make sure that it's not the prime contractor doing it, or there's not an additional subcontractor. People do come out, do these CUF reviews. They will look around, they will inspect the site, they will talk to the firms, and if it's pretty clear that, you know, firm XYZ is supposed to be doing pavement, and they see firm ABC, they see their truck and they're doing all the work, and XYZ is nowhere to be found, that's going to lead to a lot of problems. The special provisions. So DBEs are tasked with understanding the special provisions, but it's good for the prime contractors to understand it too. To know the parameters of the program and what people need to be doing to follow and stay within guidelines. You know, knowledge is power, so taking a look at those, you can find those on the NDDOT website. It's not very long. It's not very exciting, but it's not very long. And it can help kind of paint the picture of the parameters of what these firms are supposed to be doing. Providing feedback. So this is huge, especially from my standpoint. So I touched upon it a little bit, but Project Solutions, we help develop DBE firms. We want to hear from contractors what the issues are. If you're seeing common issues, common problems, things that are frustrating about the program, firms, just the processes in general, we want to know about. What's important to note is that Project Solutions is not the authority. We're not the ones that certify, decertify, get on people's cases. We're not the ones who do that. But we still like to know because that helps us incorporate our, these lessons learned into our training. If there's an issue with communication, we see these firms. We have a direct conduit to these firms. We have websites, newsletters. We're constantly reaching out, and these are the type of things we can implement into our training. So if you're seeing issues in the field, if you're seeing common issues that are happening over and over again, or you have issues with the program in general, that is something that we request that you contact us. When I say us, contact me. Call me and say, Jake, this is, every time I'm going out there, I'm soliciting these DBEs, X, Y, and Z is happening, and how can we solve this problem? That's what I want to do. And then, kind of along those lines, program involvement. So we do a lot of networking, we do a lot of training events, we do a lot of development, and one of the biggest things that would be helpful for us is if we do get more involvement from the contractors that are soliciting DBEs. So if you're a company that is out there and you're looking for DBEs, you're trying to meet those project goals, we want to work with you. We want to develop those partnerships because a lot of times people don't necessarily want to hear it from us. They want to hear it from the horse's mouth. The person that's actually paying them, employing them, they're going to want to hear from them what the issues are. So a partnership in that regard is super helpful. We always do this plug. If you want to get involved, we can find a place. We can find a place to have you speak, do a Q&A, do something for one of our newsletters, and there's a lot of buy-in. We get a lot more interest from our firms when we do have prime contractor and these bigger companies with a lot of experience getting involved. So if that's something that would be interested for your firms or whatever, you can come find me after, and we can sync up about that. And then utilizing North Dakota and Project Solutions. So kind of going to what I was just saying, if there are issues, use us, talk to us, call us, let us know what these problems are. This is what our jobs are, is to manage the program, make the program better, find the issues that are within, and attack it in different ways. A lot of what we do is education, but there's a lot of authority and power between our two companies, between the state and us as well. So the one thing that's nice about Project Solutions is that we're not a government agency, so we can move a little bit quicker, do a little bit more flexibility than the state or the federal government would be able to. And especially when there's glaring problems that can be solved through education or training or development, we are a fantastic resource to be used for that. So keep us in mind. Any other questions so far? Before we move on to this next section. Okay, so a little bit about what Project Solutions specifically, what we do. So we are funded through Federal Highway through Channel of Funding Services, but we're contracted by North Dakota as well as South Dakota and Nebraska to help manage the program and help grow and help DBE firms in general. So we provide customized training, specifically tailored to each firm and their specific needs. Go into a little bit more detail. So overall, application assistance, like I said, assisting firms with how to apply, what they need to do to apply, what documentation they need, that's what we help with. So when you call PSI, I'm the one that's going to pick up. If you call that certain phone number, I'll pick up, and I can help you walk through, here's what the documentation you need, here's where it looks, here's the link. A lot of times people can't even find the link, so it's just starting off with the easy stuff. Understanding the guidelines, so we get phone calls on this from both sides of the house randomly where people say, well, what does this term mean? What does this specifically mean? Or this guideline that's written out in the special provision, what does that actually entail? How much can I push the envelope? Is sometimes what these questions are deep-rooted in. But again, we just help reiterate the intent of the program. And that's what it all boils down to. With a lot of these specific questions, it comes down to understanding what is the intent, what is the program trying to accomplish, and are you meeting that, or are you trying to find a way to circumvent so that you can meet it? The one-on-one business services training upon request, the coaching training on how to put together estimates, read projects, and in-person online training, these kind of all blend together. So we actually do provide tailored management consulting. So if a firm is struggling with putting together a proposal, or like I said before, job costing, they don't really understand how to allocate funds or how to be able to quantify what a bid should be. These are the things that we help with. And it's worth noting that since we are funded through Federal Highway, that for any DBE firm in North Dakota, all of these services are provided 100% free. And they can get them as recurring as they want. They want to have a standing appointment on their books and their financial performance. We are open to do that. As long as that they're North Dakota certified and that they're actively involved in heavy highway bidding, that's what we're here for. Help to grow them in any way possible. So we do assist with capability statement. The one thing that's not on here is website development. We will help with that. Any marketing, we have a lot of marketing professionals. Our company is pretty much a diverse range of professionals, from admin personnel, marketing, business development, anything that caters into growing your business. We have people on standby that can put on presentations, provide one-on-one training, really get deep dive into a company as willing as that company wants to into that development. And then we do have a monthly newsletter that we push out. It's actually, sometimes we have multiple a month because we try to push them out a few weeks before the next bid letting. So if you are a DBE firm, you are automatically entitled to that newsletter. It's filled with a lot of good information, a lot of events, a lot of training events. There's upcoming bid letting or bid information, things of that nature. This is another great opportunity from the bigger contractor end to have a communication line with DBEs. This gets sent out to every single certified DBE firm in the state. So if you're trying to reach that specific audience, if there's something you want to talk about, say, promote, this is an opportunity that is available. Once again, all it comes down to is just getting in touch with me, talking about what your strategies or what you're trying to do, and then us finding the best solution to relay that information, whether it be in a newsletter or a training development. This goes into just a little bit more of the specific, some of the development assistance we do provide. Like I said, this is not an all-inclusive list. We will just work with the firm, get to know a little bit about them, what their company is about, the history, about their experience, and then we can tailor our services to what they truly need. Sometimes people don't really understand what they need, and they just say they need a new website, but really what they need is a redefining what marketing means and what their intent is and what we're trying to accomplish with marketing. So a lot of times, people come in for one thing, but then they leave with 4 or 5 other things that help them develop. Again, this is more training content. We have training, this is not an all-inclusive list, we have training in all these different environments, any way to help grow your business. And why should you participate? So if you are a DBE firm, we wholly understand how busy the construction industry is as a whole. Even in the off-season, it's still very busy. So taking the time out of your day, out of your own business development or work to contact us, to schedule a time to actually do this developing, it can be a big ask. But the biggest thing that any successful company will tell you is that if you're not spending time developing your business on the back end, not just the job that you're doing currently, but doing the back end development, then you're robbing yourself of those opportunities. And eventually you're going to hit a wall, or you're going to start to degrade a little bit. So taking the time to actually identify the weak spots of your business or what could be improved upon, and then if you are certified, taking advantage of the free service to develop those areas is something that we highly advocate. We push the word out there. And again, if you're not a DBE firm, but you work with DBE firms, this is another message to pass down. If you're noticing, man, these guys are struggling with getting their reports done on time, that's something, hey, if you've tried talking to Project Solutions, maybe a little bit of how to properly complete these submittals or how to properly do X, Y, and Z. There's a lot of opportunity. I think this business development is the untapped potential of the DBE world, especially in regard to North Dakota. It can be difficult getting people interested and involved in this, but this is where there's a lot of opportunity for growth. That if you are a DBE, great, take advantage of it, grow. If you're not a DBE and you work with them, great, help them take advantage of it and grow, because the more successful they are, the more successful the whole project will be as a whole. And then, sorry. And so going into, again, why is it important for DBEs to participate? Like I said before, this program one of the main reasons I love it so much is that there aren't set-asides. It's not that you're going to be given work regardless of how you do. This is, you need to compete against your fellow DBE firms and against other contractors and prove that you are the best, that there's a reason why you should be hired. You have to advertise aggressively. You have to make those connections, maintain those relationships. You have to build your business and grow it in the background. And most importantly, you have to show up to the job and do what you said you were going to do to the highest stability. You don't have to be a Fortune 500 company, but you have to act like one. That's incredibly important because if you talk to anybody who's soliciting or subcontracting work, they started in the same spot you did. Their company started off brand new, and they put their blood, sweat, and tears into it, and that's what's expected out of the DBE firms as well. So take advantage of the development where you can, because work's not going to just necessarily fall in your lap. We get that call sometimes of, well, what's the point of the program? I'm not seeing much benefit from the program. I don't really understand what it does. The program is just going to open the door, and obviously it's up to the firms whether or not they want to walk through it and how prepared they're going to be when they walk through it. So they must advertise aggressively, bid competitively, perform that commercially useful function to a high standard, and meet, I would say, exceed performance expectations. If you are a small business, you're constantly trying to develop yourself, prove your credibility, and you do that by having solid work, solid relationships, and developing in areas where you're weak. So to just kind of go over a little bit again, the program aims to provide access for a variety of construction specialties to compete on federally funded transportation projects. Firms must meet eligibility guidelines, application requirements, must dedicate themselves to the performance and business development to be successful, and Project Solutions offers free and confidential services to certified DBEs. This last page has an animation, but is just contact information. So again, my name is Jake McSheffrey. Contact me for anything, if anything DBE related, I should be your first phone call. I can help, I can point you in the right direction, I can help point the program in the right direction. We have a great relationship with the state, so we're constantly in communication. So if there's something that you don't necessarily want to run straight to the state for, you can talk to me, we can help solve the issue, and if it's something that we need to change within the program, that's something that we can address too. But if, don't suffer in silence, whether you're in the DBE end or the other end, the prime contractor end, if whatever you're seeing, communicate with us. And this is my number and my email to get a hold of me. So before we jump into a few fraud cases, does anybody have any other questions, comments about the program, their experiences? Positive, negative? You don't like my shirt? Yes?
So during the application process, is there a way for, if someone has limited English, is there options there?
Yeah, absolutely. So that would just be something we would work with. I personally am pretty limited in my language, expanse, but that is something that we can definitely, I don't know if you have a better
The
answer.
state has an interpretive service that we would use, so.
That's where you could direct.
Yeah. So you can start with me, and then I'll get the point in the right direction. It's a great question, because actually I have been asked that question a few times before. So.
Yeah, because if they're located in North Dakota, they'll have to go through like an interview with the UC board and stuff. So if we need to have an interpreter there, we have the ability to do that.
Any other questions? Okay. So these fraud cases I had in here, just in case there was some extra time. So you don't necessarily need to stick around for these, but some of them are kind of interesting. This first one, Massachusetts, that's my home state, so this one was near and dear to my heart. I'm not advocating for it, but so Mr. Dickinson is the sole proprietor of Woodchuck's Building and Home Center, a state-certified DBE. These individuals were partial owners of a U.S. window and door construction company, and they were awarded FAA-funded residential soundproofing improvement program contracts by Massachusetts. So the one at the bottom, the second paragraph actually explains what happened. For 10 years, they claimed that they were doing business as a supplier of windows and doors eligible towards DBE goals on each contract. All parties knew that Mr. Dickerson was merely a pass-through, would not actually be supplying any materials, including any expenses of performing the work. For 10 years, they worked and they were awarded $9.5 million. Mr. Dickinson was paid a fee of up to 4% of material costs for his role in the conspiracy. And with Mr. Dickinson's concurrence, the defendants submitted false documents to Massport in order to conceal his lack of activity to give appearance that the goals been met. So this actually touches on a couple of different things. One of the ones that's comes up a lot is broker versus supplier. So it's important to understand that if you are a DBE firm or you're a prime contractor soliciting a DBE firm for supplier work, that firm is actually performing the supplier function correctly. There are strict guidelines on what that looks like, and they involve having a warehouse, having this material routinely selling to the public, basically operating as a supplier outside of that individual contract. If that's the case, then they could be a legitimate supplier. This is an issue that happens a lot where people act as brokers or pass-throughs, so they basically say, yeah, we're going to use this company to do X, Y, and Z, but they either buy from another company or that company just solicits the materials. It's known not to do it. I think the big problem here is that it was a willful negligence, and that's what led to actual jail time. So this one's interesting too. So if you go to, so the first paragraph covers it. So providing the Wisconsin Department of Transportation fraudulent college academic transcripts, diploma, copies of college cover letters that claim that he had a civil engineering degree. Kind of goes back to your 25 years of experience, as long as it's true, So sometimes people, again, to kind of get through the government or pull the wool over their eyes, they'll falsify that they have this experience. And you would think that that's something that once they get certified, no one's ever going to follow up, no one's going to know. But tell that to this Milwaukee man. So this one, February 2014, court ordered Martin to pay restitution of almost $100,000 to the IRS and forfeit $3 million in proceeds she received from fraudulent activity. So this one was Martin submitted false and fraudulent applications so that a construction company could participate in 2 different federal funded programs. To be admitted to the programs, the owner shareholder must demonstrate economic disadvantage, in part by having a personal net worth below a certain statutory cap. The investigation determined that Martin took steps to artificially lower her personal net worth, such as transferring assets into the names of others in order to appear economically disadvantaged. So again, it kind of goes back to there are things that people try to do to cover it up. And people will claim that they didn't realize it was negligent, they didn't realize it was fraud. It sounds very fraudy, so I don't understand how you don't recognize it's fraud. But it goes back to the intent. The intent of the program. They're trying to cater towards economically, socially disadvantaged. So if you're willfully moving assets around to get below that personal net worth threshold, you're clearly taking advantage of the program. This one, so we don't have to read the whole thing, I'm just running through the second one. He and his co-conspirators operated construction companies with straw owners who qualified as disadvantaged individuals or service-disabled veterans, but did not actually control the company. So that goes back into having somebody be the front man, a patsy, or just someone says, hey, look, this is a veteran, or this is a minority-owned company, or look, I put all the information into my wife's name, now it's a woman-owned company. You can do that, that's a real thing, but again, not to rehash it, but it has to go back into that actual control. Are there any questions on that control aspect? It seems pretty simple, but a lot of questions tend to come up about it. And then we'll look at this one last one. So they actually found that this one company was saying they were doing all the work, but then they actually found that this other company was doing everything. So this other company negotiated, coordinated, performed, managed, and supervised the DBE subcontracts. The original company failed to provide any commercially useful function, so they weren't doing what they said they were going to do. And then this one actually went as far as altering letterhead and email accounts when communicating with general contractors and Pennsylvania officials. So they went as far as even having business cards, t-shirts, hard hats, a lot of effort to be a fake company just to get the DBE goal. And, they're getting a little portion off the top saying, hey, if you pretend to be this company, we'll give you X many dollars. We get the bid, we get the goal, the state meets goal, everyone's happy, no big deal. But it is a big deal because the federal government gets involved, they figure it out, then the state's not happy, the firms aren't happy, and this Pennsylvania DBE permanently debarred from state-funded contracts is not happy. So I just wanted to kind of highlight some of these do happen. If you go to the US Inspector General website and type DBE in, there are pages upon pages upon pages of fraud cases. So it is pretty common, unfortunately. And these things are being cracked down on more, so just keep that in the back of your mind. As long as you're doing what you're supposed to do, and you're taking advantage of what the program is intended for, you're not going to have any problems. I promise you the state's not that mean. Are there any final questions? Anything else anybody has? So there's some materials up here. If you are interested in becoming a DBE or you work with people who you think would be great for it, feel free to take some of this stuff up here. I have some more. And yeah, anything else? Oh, yes, thank you. They also have a booth. We're kind of tucked in the corner, but you'll find us. We're right in the corner. We'll have more information for you. We have stress relief hard hats. So if you just want to get those, you take those and leave. But if no one has any other questions, that concludes my briefing. Thank you.